This is off the record, not for real. This is off the record. Should you marry for money?
Yes.
Oh, I was not expecting that answer.
I was not either.
Okay, you know they're gonna come for you in the comments.
They are. Don't come for me. No. I mean,
Why do you say that?
Here's the thing. I think that sometimes I don't think, and I've seen it in my, I've been doing this almost 20 years. I don't think love is the only thing that's going to keep a marriage together. I really don't. I think in this day and age, there's so much that goes into a marriage. And I do think that if you are faced with, do I marry, John from, who makes $60,000 a year as a public school teacher, but he loves it, versus I'm going to, marry Barack Obama and he's about to be president of the United States, right? Like there's a very different dynamic, not just in finances, but in the power. And I do think a lot of people are attracted to the power. And so in terms of, should you only marry for money? No, I'm not that shallow. But I do think it shouldn't just be, oh, I'm in love and that's the only reason, let's just go ahead and get married. And that's why I think people treat marriage so casually. They don't really think about talking about the happily ever after. It's the after that nobody ever wants to talk about and to think about. And that's sort of what I see in my practice, that's what's bringing clients into the door, that they just didn't think about what tomorrow would bring because the moment was fine.
I mean, I feel like you're hitting on a real point that we don't like to talk about, because then it taints this idea that everybody who gets married is in love and they're deeply in love and that's what matters. But honestly, for a lot of people, it's transactional, right? I mean, if you see someone, if there's a big age gap, for example, there is a transaction that's happening there. I also feel like it's a great way to move up the class hierarchy.
Yeah.
And sometimes you may not have any other way to get out of your circumstances unless it's marriage.
And if that's what you're in for it for, then that's what you're in for it for, right? Like I don't believe, you're absolutely right, that everybody marries because they're so in love. And in different cultures, they are the arranged marriages, right? And that's not for love, but and the funny thing is they typically work out more so than non-arranged marriages, which is a whole nother topic. But absolutely, I do think that there are reasons that people want to be in a relationship and want to be married, and it doesn't always come from the Cinderella stories.
It reminds me of, I bring her up all the time, Esther Perel. She talks a lot about what marriage is, what it was before, what it meant. And back then, love was like the cherry on top. It's great if you have it. Not necessarily, for the most part, it was a business transaction, right? Like the man wants to find someone who can carry on his lineage. The woman is looking for her thing. So it's interesting these days how now that we're in it for love, when you're going through marriage, there are ups and downs. There are times where you're just like, why did I get with this man? You're looking at him while he sleeps like, what the hell was I thinking? Right? And love and emotions can be all over the place.
It absolutely can be all over the place. And I think that's really the heart of what we're talking about in terms of reasons to get married, because the day-to-day isn't a happily ever after story, right? I mean, I just think about even my own family. My kids' schedule is busier than I am, right? In terms of going here and dividing and conquering, and oh yes, and I'm married, I need just to keep dating my husband. I mean, there's just so many things that go into it that love just is not at the forefront of what you're thinking about on a day-to-day basis.
How does your career color how you approach your marriage? Is there anything, has there ever been a time where you met up with a client and you're like, okay, I know not to do that with my husband.
Let me go home and hug this man, because this is a mess.
Or maybe you said, I'm doing this, what brought her here, and I need to correct that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, are you asking me to expose all of my
I
secrets?
can pull out the tea.
If you're talking hypothetically. I mean, yes, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that people, and I think I was just saying it, one of the things that people, I mean, they say it a lot, but what got you here needs to keep you going in terms of dating, right? And I think that's what really falls off that I see a lot of people, particularly when you start to have children and your careers start to take off. You are now typically going in this direction. And yes, fidelity comes into play, but I think a lot of times people just grow apart and they don't have anything in common anymore. Or, you know, one person is working and the other person is not. And it's that, oh, well, what do you talk about? Right? Like I've got this busy day of all the things I'm doing and talking all day. And then my spouse is home and it's not that they're not doing anything, but it's the same sort of like homemaker activities versus, you know, the corporate America. And I do think that if you don't find something to have in common, and this is what I found a lot, if you're not doing something that you enjoy together, that's a red flag, because you're just going to keep doing this. And, you know, especially, and people say once your kids get out, well, what are you going to talk about? What are you going, you know, what is your time going to be made up doing?
Who initiates divorce more with older couples?
I would say it'd be women. I think in older couples, at least in my experience in my practice, it's typically women who are done raising kids, who have held on. A lot of times they don't work. And so they are now wanting to sort of be their own person, live their own lives, and not self-sacrifice and be the hero in their own stories. And that's, yeah, a lot of what I see in older couples.
How often is the spouse totally caught by surprise? Like, I did not see this coming.
You know, I think sometimes part of me believes that everybody knows that there's something going on at home and they just choose to not, you know, to look the other way. But there are also times when it absolutely, I do think, catches people off guard. And that's what creates some of the tension, a lot of the tension in divorce. If somebody comes in and they're ready to get divorced, but their spouse sort of didn't even realize that it was either there was a problem or the problem was so big to sort of divide them. So now they've got to spend the time catching up emotionally to the fact that this is over. This is sort of what's gone wrong. And now you can proceed with the divorce. And sometimes in my cases that take a longer time, that's exactly what happens. One spouse was ready and walking out the door, and the other spouse really was just trying to catch up to the fact that there were problems in the marriage. And now we're getting a divorce, and now we're going through this whole courtroom proceeding.